Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast today. I'm here with Sal Gutierrez, right?
Yes.
I tell you. Um, you get all kinds of people here, and he's got the toughest name to say, that's for sure. Um, we are Zip Files, the Zip Files. We're the podcast that dives into the aerial adventure park industry, and we've got Sal here to teach us a little bit about his training modules and the things that he does today. The reason why we play this little background music on Metallica is because I grew up in 1983, or graduated high school, and I never thought I would be training with music, and this is one of the songs. Sad but true. The industry is really struggling today. Let's dive into this. So, Sal, tell me about your education. Give me a little,
Yeah.
insight on you.
So I started as a chemist. That's kind of an odd thing to say from the beginning. I used to do analytical chemistry. I built GCMS units for the U.S. military, and I worked in virology at BYU.
Wow.
And all of that kind of led up to the point where I became a chemical engineer. And during that whole time, you may look at me, Troy, and say, what does that have to do with behavioralism?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. When I was going into school and everything, I wanted to be as far away from people as I possibly could. If you could lock me in a lab, give me the stuff, I'll give you the answer, I'll give you quality results, and then you don't have to talk to me.
Definitely.
The challenge is that there's no money in that. So when I started having a family, I had, at the time it was 3 kids. My wife kind of came to me and said, you got to work more than $17 an hour if we want to be able to continue going on. And I was working at our first job and career. I was working at a place called Seattle, Washington, and living in Bremerton. I don't know if you know the area very well, but
Yeah.
if you look like this is the state of Washington. So Bremerton's over here,
Okay.
Seattle's over here. I used to drive a 2.5-hour commute one way to go to work and back. My wife actually sat me down and said, Sal, you're paying to go to work. You do know that, between gas and everything else.
Yeah.
And so it became a major shift to try to figure out what to do to be able to make more money. And that shifted into more leadership roles into different companies and different things like that. And eventually I went to a company called Iron Flash. Intel, Micron, we're doing a joint venture together, building solid state drives.
Wow.
And I worked there as a chemical engineer. What I didn't realize, though, is that I had a natural knack of helping teams develop and grow. Whenever there was problems, I would always be the one that they would select to go and be put into those teams to make it work. And I started noticing this, so I started getting, hey, you should take on certain coaching responsibilities. Hey, you should start taking some motivation responsibilities. Have you thought about training in crucial accountability? Have you thought about training in DISC, if you know Stephen Covey or the rest of those programs, Berkman? And I started learning how to do those dynamics extremely well. And then 2019 happened. And during this entire time, I was building a real estate empire. We built up a whole bunch of stuff. I built a whole team that was going through, and 2019 happened. I realized that if I wanted to have time to see my family, I need to have my own business. So just before that, we started building this company. And I was working 13-hour days at Micron at the time. It switched over to Micron. And my family really wanted to see me, so I started working and doing flips. And in order to see me, they started doing the flips because I got enough money to be able to actually transition out of doing my W-2. But to make that future, I kept working the same hours for the dream of seeing my family, which I now had time to see, but I didn't because I was actually working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wasn't working either.
Yeah.
And that's when tragedy struck. My daughter got sick. She got really sick. COVID hit. And she didn't get COVID, luckily, but she got RSV and strep, parapneumonia and RSV. And because of that, I pretty much had everything ground to a halt. And I had a business partner that cut me out at the time. Everything was falling apart, and I was like, what did I do wrong? And so over the next several years, I started learning with a passion, how do you build great, capable teams? How do you build people up? How do you motivate people? Because I thought I had the greatest people on earth. Their credentials were perfect.
Yeah.
But the challenges what I learned is that there are mercenaries and there are missionaries. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before. This isn't mine. But for those of the audience that don't know, the basic idea is that you have missionaries, people that are willing to work with you, love you, do for you. You have mercenaries. They're just in it for the money. And they're fair weather friends, and as soon as things go wrong, they leave. Yeah. And you can get mercenaries as business partners, as employees, even as clients. And if you keep attracting those type of people, it's really difficult to grow your business.
Oh, I tell you, and I've had enough mercenaries in business. I've been in business for over 30 years, And I've had some bad partnerships. I've always said the only ship that won't float is a partnership. You know, and so one of the things that I did, and maybe you remember, is I put together an advisory board for an aerial adventure park, because for me, I build safe aerial adventure parks. I build systems, and now that I'm an expert witness, I see where the problems are. Because when you do 200 cases of empirical research, historical data, you start seeing the problem. And the problem, one insurer told me, was all training. Now, I believe 50% of all the problems, which is actually another insurer, was all braking related accidents on zip lines, because the two-wheel pulley travels at 95% gravity. That's what Petzl told me. And trying to maintain that, there's too many dynamics in a zip line. So the dynamics is we're bigger guys, and the bigger you are, the more mass you have, that's the more energy you have to stop at the end. And it's the bigger guys that are in 3 times more accidents, and it's the smallest ones that are in the next phase, because they don't make it in. So they'll go down the zip line and won't have enough. They call it gravity braking, but it's really not. I guess if you look at it, well, they're going uphill and the gravity is trying to slow them down. But the problem is there's too many dynamics, and some of the dynamics, you know, chemistry, thermodynamics is the temperature of the cable changes.
Yes.
And so when the cable gets shorter, now your run out is shorter. And that's the problem with gravity braking. And so I developed a trolley, friction braking trolley for Park City Mountain Resort, and it's the safest zip line in the world. 23 years, 0 braking related accidents, and I got that from Jamie Barrow on July 24th this past year.
Oh, wow.
Because I was up there, and anytime I show up and I happen to, you know, mention, you know, because I say, who are you? And next thing I think Troy's a 4-letter word in the industry. Because I know more than got off the tower. The zip line that I built, I was just up there filming and doing a little bit of video, and I get a phone call from Jamie Barrow, and he says, Troy, what are you doing up there? I said, I'm just doing some film. And he said, well, get a hold of Kara and we'll get you on there. But I think they were nervous that maybe I was investigating an accident.
Yeah.
But that's an accident-free zip line. And today, it's sad. The industry is saying 15 accidents for 100,000 zipliners. That's 1 in 6,700 people. You know, the zipline park that we're thinking about maybe acquiring runs 30,000 people through.
Yeah.
So that's almost 6-7 accidents every year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a lot of it's training. So what the industry is trying to do now is they're trying to allow the entropy of a human being to reset a brake. So a lot of the brake systems that are out there are resettable. So it's a mechanical advantage with a pulley. You pull on it, you reset it, then they come in, they hit the thing, and it comes this way, and then you pull it out there, and you keep pulling it in and out. Mm-hmm. But the problem is the entropy of a guide. And so how would you overcome that? What kind of training elements would you put in place, or how would you approach that?
So whenever you're looking at a complex system that is both personnel related as well as mechanically related or systems related, you can always try to fix it in 2 fronts. First off, the most important one is systematically. What can you engineer so that you can remove the friction from the personnel to make it a problem in the first place? You're removing literally the friction of a mistake being built into it.
Yeah.
The second part is actually consistency in the training and the recertification. Or how do you get it so that people are trained the same way and that they will take the responsibility of doing it? Because what happens over there is, and this is true with a lot of companies I've worked with, a lot of companies I've worked with, they train through tribal knowledge. What tribal knowledge means is that you have one person up there that says, oh yeah, here's this system, you pull this lever, you do this, you put it in there, you're good to go. Great. And none of that is described why. And none of that is described what it is for the experience for the customer or what the things are. Because some of those things are in there because it's important for the actual safety apparatus, but some of it's just for the ease. Some of it is a shortcut because someone else did. And it's just like playing a game of telephone. As you start talking to someone, the next person that trains leaves more details out, the next person leaves more details out, well, pretty soon the structure starts to break. Even worse, because it's starting to break, people try to fix it. You think that'd be a good thing, but they don't fix it off of what's supposed to be. They fix it off of what they think is best. And soon you start actually building in systematic problems into your systems.
Well, and that's exactly where we're going, because a lot of these companies that I've investigated are some of the biggest players. They are instrumental in the standards and the industry. And they were working with a standard that recently that I wrote a letter to after I saw that they wanted to raise the speed limit of the zip line and make it 15 miles an hour instead of 6 miles. Well, when they categorically placed in their standard that you need an emergency brake at 6 miles per hour, they created a social construct by not saying how you're going to reach that 6 miles. What time of year are you going to be reaching it? What's the temperature? And what's the weight of the rider?
Yes.
And it literally created a social construct. And the sad thing about that is, so the industry, I use a GPS watch. I've been a runner for a long time. I know what my pace is. I know how fast I'm going on a bike. I know how fast I'm running. You know, and you do that. And the industry has been using Bushnell speed guns. Now here you got this 6 miles per hour zip line requirement, and then you got to have an emergency brake. They use a Bushnell speed gun, kind of like the ones you radar detector type thing, or maybe your son's got a baseball and he's throwing it and you want to see that, but it starts reading at 10 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I talked to the one group that I was out there watching them inspect, and they're, oh, well, we just kind of shoot the rider out here. I'm like, yeah, but what weight of rider? And you're saying that, so you get him at 10 here, he's going to be 6 here? I mean, that's a lot of left up to chance.
It is. And here's another part that I want to actually bring up. One of the biggest faults that people have is that they take a system and they rely on a personnel problem that they cannot have any control over. I bet you can't expect a 17-year-old kid whose job is really just a pull thing to be able to look at a person and gauge how heavy they are. Yeah. And know what equipment to do it. Because I'm sure there's different harnesses, there's different equipment that's needed. There's different lines that need to be used for different weights and different sizes.
Well, actually, everybody runs down the same lines. You get into a bigger harness and everything. But to teach these 17-year-olds that, hey, we've got a big guy coming down. Now you're going to have to be holding onto that rope, which, you know, in a certain way, or you're going to have to engage that whatever brake system that has to be reset. Because a true emergency brake resets itself. And that's a spring system, like the one we built at Park City Mountain Resort. The cool thing that we did there is our trolley had a fail-safe system. So it had a brake and a wheel. And then another brake, if that brake like flew off, disintegrated, whatever, we had a second brake. And then with that, we had a full-on spring array that would stop you in a full runaway trolley. 0 accidents, 23 years.
There, that's exactly it.
Yes.
By having this engineered out, removing the friction so that the actual employee or the actual people can actually do their job.
Exactly. Let them entertain. Why let them stop people when they could be really getting people to enjoy
And that's what
there.
brings the memories.
Exactly.
That's what brings it the joy of being able to go down there. Let safety be on us so you
Yes.
can have the fun.
Yes.
And on top of that, it also makes it so that your employee retention goes up higher too.
Yeah.
Because there's less arguments, there's less fight. Because there's a natural tendency, especially if you have a personnel system that holds everyone in place. If there's a fault, it's the personnel that's at fault.
Yeah.
And how do you handle that? How do you cope with that? How do people respond to that? It's very different.
Yeah. Well, and I've had employees over the years, and I know how hard it is for employee retention. I've had one kid that maybe stayed 3 to 4 years or whatever in that 20 years that I ran the business. And one of the things that I heard came out of Seattle where you were talking, it was a group up there that was doing kind of an employee profit share. Mm-hmm. And there's several different ones, and maybe you know a little bit about that, but what he told me is you basically went to work and they started putting a certain amount of money in. After you'd been there a year, that money was now yours. Now, if you quit, you had to wait a year, 5 years or whatever. Yeah. And then you could get it. But what this kid was telling me, he said, man, I am so glad I did that because now I get a dividend every 3 months or so. And it's something that I just don't ever worry about. I mean, if I need the money, I'll take it out.
So you're hitting a very important thing. How do you keep people motivated and engaged? I've worked with several restaurants, and the biggest problem with restaurants is that you have teenagers that go into a job feeling that it's dead end, that they're in it for the money, and they're in it for the friends, and there is no loyalty to the brand. And what ends up happening is that you spend, upwards to 200% of the person's salary in training is how much you spend in turnover.
Yeah.
And if you have a turnover every season, if you're whitewashing every summer, especially if your lines aren't open 24/7, they're not, so you're paying that. That's a huge expense.
You better believe it.
Add on top of that if you have a job that's repetitive, it is shown that 34% of the employees themselves become disengaged. They're going to be on there. You're paying for them to be on TikTok.
Yeah.
And so you're paying for them to be on TikTok, the training's going down the tubes, and then you're having to replace them and fire them. Your reputation goes down, and you do the math.
Yeah.
Look how much money your park is making right now, and add 34% to it.
Exactly.
What would that money do for you?
Exactly. And that's the thing, because right now that industry standard that did the 6 miles per hour requires 40 hours annually of training.
Yeah.
And one thing that we did, so I operated a zip line over at Spanish Fork. I got some videos. I'm going to have to start putting them out, but they're older videos. I had 5 mayors from Utah County ride that zip line that came off of Red Knoll down to the gun club. And if you know that elevation changes about 300 feet.
Yeah.
And it was steep. And we stopped them all just fine. But one of the things that I learned there was we trained every day. We had everybody come in, and we had 1 hour of training. That way or at least 1 hour training every week. That way we covered that 52 hours of training, and we documented it. So the industry really struggles with documentation.
Yeah.
So tell me how to get over that.
I want to tell you something. That's
Okay.
genius.
Yeah.
Because the retention within a mind is 500 times greater. I don't know if that statistic's 100% correct. I have to look that up.
Okay.
But if I remember it, it's around
Okay.
500 times greater if you do it a little bit every day,
Yeah.
right? Compared to doing it one
Yeah.
large 40-hour swath.
That's a good
The
point.
retention is huge by doing micro trainings.
That's a good point. Well, and back to the whole thing. So the manufacturers, this is what I see in the industry today, is the manufacturers will go in and they've done all their due diligence. They've done their design failure modes, and they've got this the way you're supposed to set this up. So I'm doing a case where the manufacturer went in, he trained the franchise, they went ahead and started operating this thing totally against the operations manual, which required 2 or 3 staff to operate this thing. And they were operating with one person, which ended up being seeing a little girl, 8 years old, run off the platform without her harness or clipped in.
Oh,
And
no.
the sad thing was, this was a week into the brand new opening.
Yeah.
And those things just devastate you. People don't realize that accidents can ruin you. Slitterbaum had a huge accident. Slitterbaum used to be the #2 water park in the country. We used to see like a History Channel thing showing the top 10 water parks. They were #2. They were shut down in one day after a
Yeah.
horrible death.
It just takes one.
Yeah.
And it just takes one person. I mean, the employee that was probably putting that together wasn't paying attention. That's all it was. Oh, I didn't mean to. Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to doesn't mean anything to the family that's grieving.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really doesn't. And it kind of goes back into how do you get employees to own their role? How do you get them so engaged that they are basically as much invested in
A
your company
gatekeeper.
as you are?
Yeah.
And the answer is you've hit one of the biggest ones is ownership. One of the most effective ways, especially with restaurants, especially with a lot of things, is having employee-owned companies where they have a buy-in
Definitely.
into the system.
Definitely.
They see in the vision of the company that every hour they put in is an hour, or there's a remuneration for years to come from that.
Yeah.
The second thing that causes it is the ability to see growth. So for any successful team, there are 3 things that need to be done. First off is there needs to be safety. If there's a problem, can they feel safe enough to tell, hey, I don't know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Is there safe enough to know that there's a problem? When both the managers can admit that there's faults as well as the employees can admit that there's faults, your productivity goes through the roof.
Yeah.
People are willing to try again.
Yeah.
The second thing is that there is a continued future. Do I have a job here?
Yeah.
If am I just a cog in the wheel? Am I going to be just let go immediately?
Yeah.
That is huge.
Yeah.
So safety, communication, and the third one is the ability to see that there is a connection with each other.
Yeah.
What is it that builds that
Build that
community
relationship.
Because when they go there, if that person just feels like he's up there and he's just left up there to move that thing,
Mhm.
there's disinterest. But if he's up there and he knows the person down there is relying on him and there's that camaraderie that comes through it,
Yeah.
that's when things start getting really productive.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about is building a family-like environment. The challenge is that when you say that, people don't know what their family's like.
Yeah.
Especially there's certain people that have come from families that are not exactly ideal.
Yeah. And I'm one of them. I mean,
But I think the better explanation is a team environment.
Yeah.
Where the group is greater than the single individual. And when they're working in that group where they're saying, this is my group, I can come here with any problems. I come here on my worst day and they pick me up.
That's
And
right.
this is energy giving.
That's right.
You're going to bet that person's going to triple check that harness because that client is now just as much as part of the family, as
Yeah.
that analogy as is everyone else in the team.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to try and train into people, because we want people. So there's a campaign that I started, and I know it's probably not around, but it's called SMILE. And SMILE stands for Spread More Inspiration, Love, and Encouragement. And what I did is I did a little research and found that people smile about 20 times a day. But if you smile 40 to 50 times a day, you're happier. And I tell you, I've been having so much fun. I try, okay, kids and the babies, they're easy to get to smile. The old people that are dealing with the old age have, now we can't hear, we can't see, we can't drive. Those are the ones I want to see smile. So anytime I go to my mom's care center, and she's in a care center now, I try to get them old people smiling. I try to remember their name because it's like, it builds me. I mean, granted, yeah, there's some reciprocal energy there, but I just know it affects me.
There's a term called psychosomatic. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Psycho of the mind, soma of the body.
Yeah.
They say that over the years, your most prominent expression is etched into your face. And I truly believe that.
Yeah.
When you build environments where people are having joy, and when there's fun, when there's safety, you will find that there's less accidents and less complaints. I can even give you a real example, a scary example.
For sure.
So in college, one of my professors was an anatomy physiologist. He was teaching the anatomy class. And he told us all these crazy stories because he worked in the Wyoming hospital.
Anesthesiologist, right?
Yeah. And in the emergency room.
Yeah.
So in the emergency room, anesthesiology in the emergency room, the challenge was that anytime that something happened in those oil rigs, they showed up. Now there was one doctor there that was constantly being sued over the most minute little things. But there was another one that everyone called Dr. Smile.
Yes.
And Dr. Smile had the greatest bedside manner you can possibly imagine. One day he had a client say, hey, we just did a heart transplant, and every time I do this, it hurts. And he says, well, that's not uncommon. Give it a couple of months, it'll heal up. Hey, it's been 6 months, it still hurts. All right, that's unusual. Come in. They go in there to do an x-ray. They left hemostats inside his chest.
Yeah. I've heard this story.
You
It's
have?
good.
You
Yes,
have?
I have.
Okay, so I met the guy that actually, he was my anatomy teacher.
Wow.
And he's like, I'll tell you, free of charge, we're just going to open it up and take it out, no problem. We'll give you a free surgery.
Yeah.
It's going to be like a spa day. Not a single lawsuit.
Yeah.
The difference was that bedside manner.
I tell you, I love it. I'd read that story. I remember that Mr. Dr. Smile, or wherever I'd read it. I can't remember. Maybe it was an article.
He's got several books and different
maybe
things
that's
as
it.
well. But yeah.
Wow.
And it's that huge. That's the huge difference. When you have someone go down a zip line, it's jarring. It's scary.
Yeah.
If they go down there and maybe they just got jostled, your chances of having complaints or having problems will rise more based off of the experience of the whole rather than things. So if you have an environment that the person's disinterested and they're like, even worse, you have the person that teases like 3, 2, and then pulls the lever or different things like that.
Yeah.
For certain people, that's going to be an adrenaline rush. They're going to love it. But for some people, they're going to say they got whiplash.
Yes.
And so that's something you guys can't afford. And that's something that's not even thought about or addressed in most trainings.
Yes. And that's why, so one of the things that we're looking at doing with this aerial adventure park is my zipline trolleys have settings. And so basically you have a wheel and a brake. And wherever you locate between there is how much force you apply on the brake. Now granted, if you have a 300-pound person, you're putting 300 pounds of force here. If you have a 80-pound, they're putting 80 pounds. So it basically equalizes. So the friction braking keeps everybody, if you go up to Park City Mountain Resort and you watched everybody going down that zip line, you're going to see all weights of riders coming in at the same rate of speed. There might be a little, friction element that's, from one trolley to the other, or maybe a wind, but realistically, everybody's coming in at the same speed. And so one of the things that we're going to do with technology is we're going to have technology, because we can operate this 6-story challenge course with a 1:30 ratio. Okay. Which is what trampoline parks are using. That's what their policy is. And we can do it with the right amount of safety, the right amount of training, because we want to have our park follow all the standards, not just one. And in Utah, there's really only one standard that's been adopted, and that's the trampoline standard, which is, I helped get that involved. We got on a call with some of the state, but what's frustrating, and this is something that I don't know, me and the state have issues right now. And they know, because I wrote them a letter. They tried to give me some bad stuff, and I give it right back to them. But I called them, and I said, who is overseeing these third-party inspections for these trampoline courts? Because I've went to a few of the trampoline courts, because that's what I investigate. I want to help them keep their people safe. And I go into this one, and it's the one right next door here. And I go in, and I say, who's doing your third-party inspections? And they're like, that other trampoline park over here in American Fork, they come down and they inspect ours, and then we go up and inspect theirs.
Oh, there's no conflict of interest in that at all.
No third party either. That's like being in AA, and I'm in AA, and it's like saying, yeah, I have a sponsor, and he has a sponsor, because I don't want to ever say I have a sponsor and that sponsor and he has a sponsor and that's me.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and that's where, and it's sad because the problem is 99 out of 100 people who sign that waiver when they come through that trampoline park or go on that aerial adventure park, think that that injury that they just got, where they injured their ankle, twisted it, whatever, is part of the deal. You know, you know, the owner is perfectly protected, and they're not. And let me tell you why. Most owners don't comply with documentation, they don't comply with training, and they do not comply with manufacturer's guidelines. And it's a problem in the industry.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I got involved with the standards. Can you believe this? So the PRCA, which is not the Professional Rodeo Association, I said, you guys got to get a different acronym, because I was rodeo kid.
Yeah.
I grew up in Spanish Fork, and so the Professional Ropes Course Association called me earlier this year, which is about 6 months ago. And they said, well, you want to be on our board again? And I said, sure. You know, send me the information. We'll, you know, because it's just volunteer.
Yeah. And
the ASTM, I've been on that board, and I've been on part of the task group, which is Aerial Adventure Park, for 8 years now. But the big one was the ACCT. They're the ones that I wrote the letter that changed everybody. Because I wrote a letter after that 15 miles an hour argument they were trying to, and I said, you are nuts. And I've learned to write. So I'm an engineer that knows how to write. That's that technical writing master's. Now I'm going for the engineering. But literally all 3 standards have asked me to be on their boards.
wow.
You know. Now get this. This was another good one that happened this year. I get a call from an attorney out in Ohio. He says, hey, we want you to come out and inspect and certify our course, because the insurance company basically said, unless you have Troy Richardson inspect your course, we're not giving you insurance. Isn't that good?
That is so good. And you know what that shows? People trust you.
Yeah.
And that trust is something that has to be earned.
Yeah.
It's not something you can walk in. I mean, I can't walk into there into any of these groups and say, hey, trust me. Because I don't have the credentials, I don't have anything else. But more importantly, that I don't have the confidence that comes from the knowledge of what comes from this, or the passion.
Yeah.
And that's what you're trying to build into all your systems.
I tell you, you know, my whole thing is, let's get over this stuff. If you had an accident that I investigated, get over it. You know, it's like,
They took it as a personal offense.
they do.
Yes.
They stop buying products from me that are going to be safer.
Yes.
They point me out when I'm at the conventions. That's the guy that, you know, was in the, but I don't have control over the lawsuits. I get a call from an attorney somewhere in the country. They say, we've got an accident at this such and such zip line. Can you look at it? I give them an overview. I say, yeah, I think I can help you. I start diving into it, find out, oh, I know the builder, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But what's really frustrating is when I know the builder and they're not complying with the standards that they are helping write.
And that's a good point. How do you hold not only your employees, but your vendors accountable? And the answer to that is actually the partnership that we're talking about. So I call it the partnership puzzle.
Okay.
The partnership puzzle is basically that you put the right person in the right role and have the ability for them to grow and understanding what it is. This isn't a job. This is you coming in and helping me get this thing done through the crossing, the finish line. It's not about speed. It's about doing it right.
Right on.
And when you start doing it in that regard, there's some people say, well, but I'm a volume game. If I don't have 50, 60 jobs this year, I'm going to go under. I said, understood. When you do this job right, and I'm able to see it right, this is how much volume of more work you're going to be able to get.
Oh, I can see. Yeah.
And the challenge is that it's hard to do that retroactively.
Yeah, and that's what I worry about. You know, because we're coming into looking at a park that's got a lot of problems.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, I just basically said, we're going to find out how many lawsuits you've got, and we're going to make sure if we do buy this, that they're not part of us. Because I'm working with a big company right now.
Yeah, a clean cut is going to be necessary.
Exactly. And then just, hopefully, the staff will understand what we're trying to do. We're going to change out all the equipment. There are not going to be any two-wheel death sliders on this course. We're going to make sure that all the zip lines have friction braking and a spring backup for backup. So, I've done 3 accidents up at this location, investigated 3 accidents, and I'm looking at buying it. But realistically, I know the problems.
Yeah.
I've been there. The owners actually called me after the first accident and said, hey, help us. But, they're just only so much you can do.
a lot of times they don't have the ability or means to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because the reason they got where they're at is because it's the best they can do.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that happen is you show someone what's wrong, and then a lot of the mistake is that people walk away. They don't ever ask the question, well, how do you implement this?
How do you walk into some place, and because I walk into places all the time and I'm like, oh, hypothetically, I'm not even looking at that, you know, because I'm seeing things that shouldn't be happening. And that's where, you know, I ran into this problem. I've seen like the top managers out on top of a 6-story thing, unclipping themselves, having both, you know, because the way safety is, redundant safety is a must. You have a clip that basically you clip it in, and then the other clip you clip it in, and when you take one off, you're not supposed to be able to take this one off. They're called them smart clips or whatever. But realistically, the wrongful death I'm doing in California right now is because she was allowed to take them off. She's doing some kind of TikTok video, fell and landed them the wrong way from 20 feet and died.
Yeah. So how do you get people to do that? There's the motivations come in kind of 4 categories. And I'm going to go in this. And this is true if you're trying to motivate a teenager to show up, if you're dealing with burnout, if you're dealing with anything. There are 4 major motivations and personalities. This is not my thing. This is old.
Yeah.
This philosophy comes back to Hippocrates. I don't know if you know the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
He talked about the 4 humors.
Okay.
They have a lot of different names. The company that I like to partner with that has one of the most quick assessments, it's called Bank.
Okay.
Cherry Tree, I love you. You've
Okay.
made an incredible product.
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid for that, and that's just genuinely coming out.
Hey.
So I'm going to use her model of the system.
Yeah.
First off, you have your action-oriented people. The way you get them motivated is by talking to them about the pure numbers. Look, if you don't teach this, this is the amount of lawsuits, this is the amount of deaths, this is how fast you're going to close down. If you do follow this is the amount of gain you're going to do, this is the reputation you're going to get, and this is how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only things they care about.
Yeah.
You go into the blueprints. Blueprints are the people that care about how things are done right. They're all about risk, baby. You tell them about the risks that are coming from, yes, you changing this is going to risk this, but it's going to cause this much overhead.
Exactly.
And that overhead for you is death.
Yes.
That's pretty big risk.
Yeah.
This is the way the industry should be. This is the standards. This is what the industry is supposed to be. They'll come for.
Yeah.
They're the easiest ones in this regard to transition.
Okay.
Then you have the nurturers. Nurturers are going to be influenced by the big picture. But what about the fun?
Yeah.
You know, we only have so many staff. We have a tight-knit group. We trust everyone. Yeah, but that trust caused this problem in the first place. The bigger picture is that what is the win-win for everyone? How do we make it so that you are showing the people that when they are clipping that way, they're feeling the love that you are taking care of them.
Yeah.
The last one's the knowledge base. The knowledge base are kind of difficult because you can't convince a knowledge base. All you need to do is give them all the research there and they'll convince themselves.
There you go.
And so when you go to the problem, a lot of people try to go and do team dynamic trainer, big facilitation changes, is they do a one-size-fits-all. And at best, you get 25% of your population to agree with you.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are going to go, yeah, we'll just
And
do
it
what
makes
we're
sense
doing.
because you got that 4 categories. That's an interesting way to look at that.
So one way to do it is if you have to do a general announcement, you kind of hit all 4 bases. Here's a link below that has all the information. There's your knowledge. This is the straight up numbers that's going to happen to you. There's the action. We are here as a community. We're building something bigger than themselves. There's the nurture. And then this is the way that it should be and this is how it's going to be enforced from here on out. And this is how I expect you to enforce others. Ooh, they love that.
Yeah.
Blueprints love enforcing other people.
Yeah.
Boom, that's how you do it. And then you go to each individual as well. And I would not do this because all leadership is local.
Yeah.
I don't want to expect the CEO to go down to each team member. No. You have whoever's that boss, the direct report that gives that report.
Yeah.
And you work from that top structure down so each person gets it.
Yeah. Makes
And
sense.
the thing is, that can be done really quickly. We've done this in teams in under 3 hours.
Wow. Well, and I want to see how this relates because I had this notion, because it kind of follows that in some ways, that when I do the hiring at my park, I'm going to ask them what they want to be in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, yeah, you definitely want the one that says, I want to be running this park in 10 years, but you also want people that want to be in the medical industry because those are the ones that you're going to teach the defibrillators, the incident training, the rescue training for your course. They're going to be the ones that you're going to be training in medical stuff. They're going to want to learn that. Then I'm going to ask another group, and then if they're engineers, if they say I'm going to be an engineer, those are the guys that want to follow the standards, to do the compliance, to do the inspections. And then the last one is the hospitality. If they want to be in some kind of hospitality, those are the 4 categories I was going to try and attract. But I wondered how that related to your 4.
Well, you could do any industry in any field.
Okay.
Let's just pick one.
Okay.
Let's go with hospitality.
Okay.
How does hospitality look at the different four? Number one, action. What's in the money, baby?
Yeah.
What is the physical actions? How do I make this a 5? Let's make this a 10-star resort.
Okay.
You know, kind of thing.
Okay.
That's how they're going to do it. The nurture is pretty easy. I'm going to make the best experience they ever won. If they don't come out laughing, if they don't come out feeling like they had the best experience of life, then I failed.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to run it. The blueprints is, how do I do this in a way that is systematic, that I can help the most people so they have the exact same consistent experience? That's how they're going to run it. The knowledge base is going to have their own idea, because whenever you deal with knowledge, they have an idea of what they want as their own goals, which is awesome, because they usually come up with things that you never thought of.
Oh, these kids nowadays are just so brilliant. I know what my strengths are.
I want to tell you something that I usually charge people for.
Yeah.
That I think it'll be really kind of cool for you.
Yeah.
It's something that the concept that my company has come up with is called the chair.
Okay.
And the chair is not saying, because the problem with a lot of personality assessments, I mean, I love DISC, I love Colby, I love Bank, I love color theory. There's a lot of these companies that go out there. The challenge is that they kind of give you these things that, hey, this person's going to be good at finance. Hey, this person's going to be good at hospitality. And then you have the net result of either reorganizing your entire organization to fit the roles of the employees, or reorganizing your employees to go into roles they don't want to go into in the first place. Because yeah, they're good in the numbers, but do they ever want to be in accounting?
Yeah.
Both of which are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So instead, what you do is you build the role. Okay, this person has this role. What kind of demeanor and disposition do they need to have?
Yeah.
And you build out their personality persona for that chair. And when a person steps into it, it's like, okay, cool. You want to be this role. You need to be more assertive. You need to be more people oriented. You need to work on these traits. It removes the ambiguity of what it is to excel in that role. It also allows people to try the taste of that role before giving a full commitment to it. So when they come to you and say, I'm not loving this, well, what do you want to do? Because let's face it, 17-year-olds, they're going to shift in what they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example of what happened at the restaurant just recently. The kid was saying, hey, I've been a server. He was the top server. And we were talking about this guy's getting the most tips. He's doing really well. He's like, but I want to be chef. And the company was so dependent on him at that point, they couldn't afford to leave him out of the serving line.
Yeah.
The risk of putting him back there and learning how to do all this stuff was too much.
Because he was too valuable.
He was too valuable. Where he was at. And so because of the fact that this friend of mine that was doing this, he had the ability to use these roles. He says, well, if that's what you want, you can never do it in this company. But I have a sister company over here that we could just take you and put you in as a chef. Well, it went from verge of he was not doing as well, he was really on the chopping block, to being extremely engaged and put in a position where he could start growing.
Yeah.
And so having the ability to have that flow, I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
Being able to teach them the roles they want to be in, to allow them to go into the chair that they are going to be in, will cause that retention to go up. And it causes that ownership of those roles to be so much greater.
Wow. I love it. And I didn't even know that you were in the restaurant industry, because it was, when you said that, I wanted to make sure I shared this. So our 6-story challenge course that I want to build, I want to put a restaurant on the top.
Ooh.
Because we're going to have elevators, because we're going to allow people that are in wheelchairs to be able to go anywhere on our course. Now, it might not happen right off the bat, but that's what our goal is.
Yeah.
And we want a Michelin star restaurant on the top of our
There you
world-class zipline destination.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, parents could go there and eat and let their kids, do that or whatever. But I've gotten to become a foodie. I like growing things.
That's because you're a good man.
Yeah, and boy, it's, to pop something in the microwave and then eat it after, you just go, God, there's got to be a better way.
Yes.
But, Sal, I think we probably hit a point where we can probably wrap things up. But are there any end thoughts that, tell me, where do you think we can grow together?
Well, personally, with the Zip community that you have,
Yeah.
what I would love to work with you is actually building those roles of those chair in the first place. That way we can hire right the first time. Build the culture well.
Exactly.
There was a study done by Harvard University
Okay.
that took over 200 companies, and they studied them for over 11 years. And they found those that had good company culture had growth of upwards, on average, 756%.
I like it.
Compared to those that didn't, which were around 2%.
Yeah.
In growth.
Yeah.
That is staggering. And I would love to kind of show you how to build that culture in the first place so that you can have that growth from the beginning instead of saying, yeah, we've been around 10 years. And then we're going to start growing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and he's good. So I can't say enough about it, and just to kind of back up a little bit, that this is the zipped files, and I want to just share a story that's sad. I tell it quite often, and I don't want to do it just because you know, it's that sad, but it's her story, and it's Lisa's story, and I'll leave it at that. Lisa was up ziplining with her family. Her mom was in a restaurant at this ski resort. They started out their zipline adventure that day at this brand new zipline up in the mountains, and Lisa didn't make it home. And Lisa hit a tree, and Lisa died on the line. And the sad thing about what happened is there's so many things that, you know, this is, you'd think that the training of this resort would have been something that wouldn't allow this to happen. Because what had literally happened is the operations had kept going at 30 miles an hour wind. They had wind gusts of 30 or 65 miles an hour, sustained winds at 35, and they were supposed to shut down at 30. Now, this is a ski resort that has wind monitors all the time in the winter, and they have monitors on the mountains, but nobody was paying attention. And so when she hit that tree, she stopped dead. Took them 45 minutes to get her off that line. Now, the sad thing was she was in emergent need of care. When they got her off the line at the bottom, she was in cardiac arrest and died on the way to Utah Valley Hospital, which is 20 minutes away. Now, that's not the bad thing. Now, I mean, it's bad, but this is kind of how the ripples continue. 2 weeks later, one of the guides took his own life. Felt like it was his problem.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the disconnect there, you know? And I don't want to leave it on a bad note, but we can do better, people. We're going to include Sal in our work. We're going to have people that are making people happier and keeping them safer. And we're going to be able to rescue from anywhere on our park. We're going to create a destination with ZAP. Thank you for tuning in with the Zip Files. Sal here, and I'm not even going to try to say your last name, so go ahead and tell us.
Sal Gutierrez, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.